Good morning, everyone, and good evening, potentially where you're tuning in from. We'll just wait a few seconds for some more attendees to join us. We've just started the broadcast. Great. So thanks a lot for joining us today. We've got over 1,400 of you signed up to this webinar with Reuters events, and it's with great pleasure that we've partnered with Power Factors for our second webinar together. So thanks again for the team there for joining, and we've also got 4 expert speakers today, and the topic is finding hidden losses faster and maximizing PV project returns across your fleet. So we've got 60 minutes of discussion, panel discussion, which will include opportunity for all of the audience to ask questions. So you'll be able to fire your questions out in the chat throughout, and we'll address them at the end of the session. And in addition, there'll be a poll throughout, so look out for that about halfway through, which we'll announce. So make sure you fill out the poll questions. And finally, as always, the session's recorded, so you will get a copy of the recording, and it will be sent out from the email you registered to on Monday. So you can look out for that in your inbox as well to tune back into the insights. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Steve Hannawalt, the co-founder and EVP at Power Factors. So Steve, if you can take it away and introduce the panelists.
Perfect. Thank you, Reese, and thank you, Reuters Events. We're really pleased to be here today to talk about this important topic. So first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Again, we have a really important topic to talk about: why every megawatt hour counts in this very challenging market environment that we live in. Before I get into the introduction of the panelists and so on, I wanted to give a little bit of context. You may have heard that Power Factor's new Drive Pro product release came out. It was announced on Tuesday of this week. It adds first of the kind in the industry analytics, advanced analytics, to add existing Drive asset performance management capability to the Drive platform. We've been developing this technology for the last 3 years under a DOE Sunshot program. After about 5 months into the last several release cycle, we brought some customers in to really help us alpha test, to help us make sure the requirements, the specifications were really spot on. And we're really pleased to have Arevon today with us to talk about their participation as co-innovators in the product development. Before I introduce the panelists again, I want to just talk about these market dynamics that are making it very challenging for solar power industry operators, owners, and asset managers to really maximize production and to maintain the project cash flows that are required. So first of all, as we talk to industry stakeholders, we identified 4 key dynamics that are causing a lot of challenges in the marketplace. First of all, as many of you know, we're seeing a falling of energy prices. So PPA prices are continually going down. Add on top of that, we are seeing a continual price compression for O&M and O&M operators. Because of that, we're seeing a greater desire for owners to transfer some of that operational risk from themselves to the operator themselves. And then as we're reading in the marketplace recently, more and more, especially in the US, but around the world, we're seeing that the ability to make our growing problem of a P90 bank model returns is becoming harder and harder to do. We're going to talk about some of the dynamics that are causing the inability to make bank model projections and what that's doing in the marketplace. So all of these forces are basically putting more top-line revenue pressure on owners, operators, and asset managers. And we think a tool is needed to help owners and operators extract all of the value from their assets, primarily through the production of additional generation. So it's generally understood that these recoverable losses, especially in a solar array, are deeply hidden deep into the array. They're not easy to identify. They're not easy to find. It's not easy to understand the root causes. So with the release of Drive Pro and the advanced analytics, we think there's finally a tool in the marketplace that can equip and operators to understand where the losses are occurring, to set up projects for revenue recovery, and to go after and realize those. So again, as we said, we added Arevon to our task, to our innovation team, to help us and guide us in sharing how they think a tool like this should be set up. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves, to talk about their company, and then we'll go right into the topic. So first of all, what I would like to do is ask Anand to share who you are and what you do in the marketplace, Anand.
Thanks, Steve, and hello, everyone. My name is Anand Narayanan. I'm the VP of Asset Management at Arevon. So Arevon is an affiliate of Capital Dynamics, right? Capital Dynamics is the Swiss fund manager. We are the execution arm of Capital Dynamics, right, per se. And so, so as being part of that, we're focused on development, construction, finance and accounting, asset management, performance management, right? My particular team focuses on the operational asset management side of things, along with the performance team as well, which Ryan's a big part of. We currently manage 4 gigawatts, right, of operational assets, and we have another 4 gigawatts, which should be coming online in the next 2 to 3 years. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on this particular topic and this particular setting. So I think it's thanks to Reuters and thanks to Factors for putting this together for us.
Yeah, great to have you. Thank you, Anand. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do at Arevon?
Hi, my name is Ryan Jones, and I am Director of Performance and Engineering at Arevon. And as Anand says, we are, we're a lean team of asset managers and performance engineers who work together to track the ongoing performance and uptime of our growing portfolio of renewable energy assets. Yeah, I think we work very closely with the asset management team and as well as with the Power Factor team. And very happy to be here today and be part of this discussion.
Thank you, Ryan. Abhilash, how about you? What do you do at Power Factors? Describe a little bit about that.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everybody. So my name is Abhilash Krishnan. I am the Director of Product Management for Renewable Energies at Power Factors. So for those who might not know, Power Factors provides asset performance management and field service management solutions in the renewable energy industry across various asset classes: wind, solar, PV, storage, and even hydro. And so in my role particularly, I am responsible for making sure that Power Factors meets the needs of the renewables market through its various solutions. So the bulk of my time is spent working with customers, understanding the needs of the market, and then communicating that to our development teams internally, and making sure that we deliver value to our customers. And like the others, I fully believe that this is a very important topic to be talking about, and very excited to be here. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Abhilash. So I'm going to open up this first question for all of the panelists. As the industry matures and energy prices continue to decline, owners are looking to preserve margins by incentivizing asset managers and operators to exceed forecasted revenue streams. What are some of the trends you are seeing in asset management and O&M agreements that motivate stakeholders to increase yield from their solar projects? Let's start off with Anand.
Sure. Obviously, very near and dear topic, right? I mean, as asset managers, right, I think we're focused on contract management, risk management, relationship management, as well as performance management, right? And so a big part of this is having good partners, having good relationships in the marketplace, right? And to start off with, right, again, our O&M partners are key in this aspect. Probably if you go 5, 6, 7 years ago, a lot of the focus was primarily on availability and making sure that availability was kept high, right? I think that trend for us as asset managers is changing towards more specific towards yield. Not that availability is not important, but more focus is on making sure that yield is increased. For that, I think we are helping our O&M providers as well as ourselves in this process by having them focus on some of the technology trends and the innovation trends that are coming up in the market. I'll start with aerial IR scans, right? I mean, the ways and means by which you can reduce some of the costs. I very distinctly remember 5 years ago, I was at a conference and I said, aerial IR scans are still not up there in terms of price being competitive from a price perspective, but that's changed dramatically. And then the solution set has also changed dramatically as well, right? Not just focused on modules, but even doing high voltage, medium voltage hotspot checks, right? So I think that's been a major push in the market. Equipment manufacturers also have become smart, right? They understand that there is a drive towards yield, and so they're moving towards modularized inverters. So you have multiple MPPT functions available, maximum power point tracking functions available, better tracker algorithms, right, coming into the market. So all those are, again, things which all of our partners are looking to do. O&M providers are looking to work with these equipment manufacturers so that they can perform some of the work and hence increase availability. SCADA centralization, I think that was a big trend, right, which came into being.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the work which Ryan and with you guys have done is towards centralizing that, right? So there's a lot of that. And then grid reliability services, right? Again, we're in a market right now where the off-takers can actually pick up the phone, call their O&M provider and say, hey, I need reactor part support, I need voltage support, I need frequency support, and our inverters are capable of doing that. So I think these are all the trends and ways by which I think we're trying to increase yield and hence increase the revenue output from our projects. And I think that's the trend that I think all with us as well as our partners are all moving towards.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of different ways to maximize yield and to squeeze every megawatt hour of the plants. Let me ask a follow-up question to both you and Anand and Ryan. In addition to production incentive programs, it's now common for owners to include some form of performance guarantee in their asset management and O&M agreements. What kind of risk transfer mechanisms do you see and do you think are effective in the marketplace? So that's Ryan or Anand. Please feel free to share about that.
Ryan, you want to go first? Yeah.
Sure. So, I think those are changing continually, as all things in solar. O&M agreements are generally, seeking to find that optimal trade-off between cost and risk. And I think as these O&M prices are under increasing pressure and O&M scopes are being stripped down to just basic preventative maintenance, this gap that we see between the level of services that the O&M subcontractor is able or incentivized to provide and that, and what is required to kind of maintain the optimal performance of the plant is widening. And so I think, energy guarantees and parts replacements and availability guarantees, they're all, trying to find that middle ground between risk and cost. And I think really it kind of depends on, on the risk appetite of the investor and the O&M contractor as to which of these mechanisms work best. But I think really what I've seen is generally the best cost versus risk value for both parties in these contracts is the availability guarantee. That said, there are a lot of different flavors of availability guarantees, not all availabilities are equal in this regard. So I think from the owner perspective, an energy-based availability guarantee is probably the best to ensure that the O&M provider is, will be responsible for, all of the energy deficiencies. For example, degraded inverters, not just inverters that are offline, where time-based availability guarantees would not.
Right.
And we have, I think we're still have yet to really see the predominance of these energy-based availability guarantees sort of formulated into O&M agreements to date, but I think this is coming. Certainly something that we're interested in. Another problem that we see with the guarantees is that often these guarantees thresholds are set too low, whether it's that there are too many outs or carve outs in these contracts. I think the bonus malus, is a traditional kind of mechanism there to transfer that risk, and I think that works well. But bonuses should be based on technical availability, again, not on contractual availability, which provides any number of carve outs for the O&M provider, so that the owner doesn't end up paying for a bonus for an O&M provider that to an O&M provider that that provides with a technical availability, a very low technical availability of like 95%.
Right. Right.
In those cases, it's it doesn't make good sense to be rewarding the O&M provider. So I think it really, it depends on risk appetite, and it also really, I think there are some, the devil's in the details in these contracts, and really ensuring that, that we get the right formula for the availability guarantee and the right schema set up.
Exactly. Ryan, I once modeled a contract performance guarantee where there was 11 different excuse reasons for why the O&M contractor was not held accountable, and I started scratching my head thinking, so what are you held accountable for? So these can get really interesting, really tricky, especially as the lawyers get into the project. Anand, let me follow on
Steve,
a little bit
just to,
about this with you.
If I could just, because I do think what the point that Ryan just brought up is very key. Because one of the key things that we have realized through talking to various players in the industry is that there and there is this need from owners to transfer risk further downstream, and initially that pressure is pushed onto asset managers, and through you got to hit these budgets, and these are the budgets we're trying to track against, and you got to explain why we're not hitting those budgets and so on, and then further pushing it further downstream to your operators, right, if they're independent providers.
Right.
But and that's going to continue, right? If you think further downstream where, you've got corporate VPPAs coming out, and you've got, that's becoming a trend, and you've got, basis risk that is also going to start hitting owners a lot more moving forward. These are things that more and more owners are going to have to take on and then have to push downstream in some manner. And one of the key points that Ryan made over here is that, yes, performance guarantees are something that are really interesting to owners, but to what extent can you actually track against them? And one of the key things you've heard from operators is, well, really, how do I know that I can trust the model here? How do I know that I can trust the data here? So I'm being forced to sign a contract to deliver against a performance guarantee, but how do I know that the manufacturer specifications and models are even reliable in this particular context? So just another interesting dimension where I think it becomes very important.
Yeah, very good point, Abhilash. And this really speaks to something we're going to talk about a little bit later, and that is, if you're not using a common platform where you have transparency and visibility of the owner, operator, and the asset manager, how can you really administer a complex, time or energy production-based availability or performance guarantee? It's really, really not feasible in my mind. So that kind of challenge really asks for an open, universal system in my mind. And so that's kind of a good follow-on for Anand. Anand, what kind of data and performance visibility do asset managers need to manage this risk and optimize portfolio production?
I think Ryan hit upon this this small point briefly, which was about us being all of us being a lean team, right, and trying to achieve what we need to achieve with that, right. So it becomes important for asset managers and performance engineers to some extent be able to see exception-based reporting, right. So things like, okay, am I hitting my point of interconnect limit, right? And whether am I going over or whether am I under, right? Are all inverters online at my project? Which inverters are derating? Which inverters are derating due to DC health? Which inverters are derating due to tracker outages? Which inverters are derating due to soiling? Which part of my project is getting curtailed? Am I following the curtailment signal properly as well? All those are, I think, critical aspects which my asset management team is like really focused on. And again, all of us have quite a few assets to manage, right? So when that comes up, they want quick and easy ways to identify those major hit points, right? Making sure that they can manage against the budget, right? Easy ways to manage against the budget. I think those are, again, very critical points which come up. And then ultimately, like I said, right, contract management, right? Making sure that my availability guarantee, what the O&M provider is telling me is accurate or not. And again, right, I mean, we make sure that we go with O&M providers that we are very comfortable with, have a great relationship with. At the same time, I think we want to make sure that the calculations which are being done, the classification of the outages, given the million carve-outs that there are, right, are being done accurately. All those, I think, are really critical for us from a visibility perspective, right? And I'm sure Ryan has a ton of other focused performance metrics, which I think we are all focused on, right? And the performance engineers want to look into. But from an asset management perspective, right, I think we're spending like the first hour of the day being focused on, okay, you know what happened yesterday or what happened over the weekend, right? And then then expanding that search to more of a week, right? I mean, am I seeing the same trend across the week, right? Those kind of quick hits are, I think, very, very important for us.
Yeah, I like that, Anand. And as a former asset manager, the ability to come in and kind of look at what's my digital plan for the day, what are the dashboards that are telling me what I need to prioritize now is really, really critical. So with that, I want to transition over to Ryan and ask Ryan a couple of the questions about an asset performance management software platform. What things have you seen that have made them not so effective in the past? There's a lot of software systems, monitoring systems out there, and frankly, they haven't been as effective as I think asset managers and operators need to be successful. Why is that? What do you think was lacking in the past?
You know, this is a very rapidly evolving market within a market. You know, these software analysis platforms, and I think, you know, the software tools that are available today to track and analyze performance of wind and PV plants is on the whole drastically improved over, you know, what they were, say, you know, 5 years ago or so. And these tools continue to evolve at a rapid pace. Most of the leading monitoring platforms are able to provide, you know, sophisticated metrics that normalize weather influences and track baseline plant performance, but I think they often miss the core value proposition for performance engineers and asset managers, which is ultimately to help improve the operational efficiency in identifying and troubleshooting performance issues. And going a step further, to prioritize the issues that have the greatest impact on production and ultimately the financial returns. So, you know, in order to improve the operational efficiency, you know, asset managers and performance engineers, they need efficient and effective tools to spot these trends like Anand was talking about, and drill down into the data to pinpoint issues and identify, you know, sort of a set of actionable events that can be used for restoring the systems back to their full operating capacity as soon as possible. You know, I think a lot of the systems out there are, you know, able to provide a list of standard KPIs, but they often lack those usability and the features, that really help facilitate effective performance investigations. And and I think that's the that's the big takeaway there.
Yeah, thank you. So follow on. Obviously, we're talking to Arevon. You're one of our partners. What led to your decision to adopt the PowerFactors Drive platform?
So that's a good question. When I started at Arevon back at the end of 2017, we were managing a portfolio of about 1.5 gigawatts of solar and wind in the US, with about 5 different O&M subcontractors and an equal number of different monitoring platforms. Each O&M provider was using a different monitoring platform, and there were large variations in definitions of metrics and models, as well as data tags and visualization and analysis tools. So that in itself was quite a challenge. We over the course of about 6 months, we conducted an RFP with leading monitoring providers such as yourselves, and to evaluate these systems with the goal of improving operational efficiencies by centralizing data our data aggregation into a single platform, and where we could run analysis and reporting and all of that, and help to standardize those formats.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask a little bit more about.
Drive.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to ask you a little bit more in just a minute. We're going to have an audience poll. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll set up the audience poll. And while we're doing that, I'm going to have you elaborate a little bit more, Ryan, on, what would you envision the ideal asset performance management software platform to contain in terms of features and functionality? So audience, go ahead and respond to the poll here. This gets back to the question again about why monitoring applications have not been as effective as they could be. And while we're doing that, Ryan's going to opine on what he considers to be the ideal feature functionality of an asset performance management software platform. So go ahead and respond to the poll, and we'll take a look at that after Ryan answers the question. Ryan, go ahead.
So I think for us, automation of sort of first level performance analysis to characterize and prioritize system losses, and even initiate corrective actions is kind of the dream. Again, we have a very lean team, and we're looking to add that, sort of additional layer on top of what our boots on the ground O&M providers are incentivized to do. And I think to that end, finding ways to automate, things like data validation as well as models and sensors is key. I think the Drive platform has pushed us a good ways down the road with these objectives, but there's there's still quite a bit of manual digging and interpretation that needs to be done with regards to determining and initiating a corrective course of action. Reliability centered maintenance and predictive analysis is kind of the next level, is what I see for the renewable energy industry. And with the help of platforms like Drive, which are able to incorporate these very sophisticated performance models and machine learning algorithms to correlate historical production with weather and outage events. The next step is kind of to utilize this data-driven analysis along with weather forecasts to create a kind of crystal ball into understanding what course of action we should be taking in the near future. Right.
Excellent. Let's take a look at the poll, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. Anand, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, a couple of other topics.
Ahead.
Primarily since you said ideal asset performance software, right? I think it would be great if owners and operators use the same tool, right? I think especially giving us the view of what is happening on the maintenance side, I think would be extremely valuable for us. It'll help us define reliability. It'll help us define reliability metrics, right? Which is, I think, key. Which is, I think, where we should kind of move towards right now, given some of the aging plants that we have, right? I think that's although it's a dream, right? And I think it's going to be a challenge, because obviously, right, all O&M providers and operators prefer their own tools, right? And so, some amount of standardization, I think, would be extremely valuable, right? I think I'm hoping solar GADS kind of comes about, which forces all of us, all of our hands, right, towards going in one way or the other. I think that's extremely critical. The other piece, which Ryan touched upon as well, is the entire data validation piece, right? I've been a performance engineer. I know Ryan and my performance team kind of spends tons and tons of time making sure that the data is accurate, right, before we run any analysis. When I was on the O&M side, we had the same issue, right? I mean, owners are asking for data within 5 days, right? And now when I'm on the owner side, I'm probably doing the same thing as well. But I think what's important to understand is the amount of time spent on data quality checks and data validation, and trying to minimize that as much as possible, right? There's a ton of techniques which I think we've all worked towards, which needs to be implemented all across, as well as I mean, again, energy data and weather data you don't mess around with, right? I mean, you provide people with options that you can use this or that. But I would say probably for the other equipment information, I think there's a lot of ways by which I think we can make sure the data is accurate, the data is recovered, and we're not spinning wheels on analysis which has bad data behind it, right?
Right. Okay, thank you, Anand. Let's take the results of the poll. Reese, can you reveal those to us, see what the audience thought about the poll question? So historically, solar monitoring applications have not been as effective as they should be due to, seems like pretty much agreement that the inability of the analytics to pinpoint where the losses are occurring was the highest, followed by poor or inaccurate performance models. So that's interesting. That's a good segue then over to my good friend Abhilash. Abhilash, you just heard a couple of things I thought were really key. They both talked about data-driven decision making, and they both talked about operational efficiencies, poor quality data, suspect models. How does that comport with the Drive Pro product requirements and what you really and the team put into the product?
Yeah, Steve. So, the idea for us really started off with, the basic crux of the fact that Ryan mentioned before, which was you have a lot of tools out there that are putting out KPIs and that have, dialed in on what these KPIs, are and what they represent. But beyond that, the initial idea behind Drive Pro is really how do we open up the black box behind these KPIs? And, a lot of the key points that Anand and Ryan have talked about, I think, really speak to what our vision for Drive Pro also was, which was how can we go beyond just outage and curtailment, really open up the box from your theoretical maximum all the way through your actual production, help you identify exactly where your losses are happening, how much is happening, does it matter, should you be doing anything about it, and if you should, what can that actually be? And that took us through an entire journey, right, as we started solving that, because what we realized is that there were certain things we had to break the mold on in terms of engagement between different stakeholders, and it led to so within Drive Pro we have like powerful tools and visualizations like waterfall charts and loss walks, and you have very powerful click-throughs that let you go from a portfolio level directly down to an inverter level with just 2 or 3 clicks. And it also encompasses things like machine learning classifiers that are detecting underperformance and also pinpointing what the cause of that underperformance is. Along with kind of a digital twin that is using operational data to help you understand what your true baseline performance is versus what manufacturer specifications and so on are telling you, right? So building all of this together, Arevon has been a great partner for us, because as we've gone through this journey of alpha testing and beta testing with Arevon, we've realized a lot of things around, the concepts of workflows and the concepts of, what their constraints are, how we can marry all these concepts together so that it really kind of speaks to this kind of exception-based management idea that they were talking about before, and really kind of hone in their focus on what really matters for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. So you described a bit of this, Abhilash, but what were some of the other problems that you were trying to solve as you set up the requirements and specifications around Drive Pro? Anything else you want to mention in that regard?
Yeah, so what I talked to you about was the happy path, right? And as we, there's a really fun little story here, right? So as we, a lot of this just the analytical work came out of, a grant that Power Factors had won with the Department of Energy through the Sunshot Initiative. And so over a few years, we had been putting in research into how we could build an entire loss framework and characterize every single interval, exactly what loss was happening, going beyond just, like I said, outage and curtailment, right? So cable mismatches, DC subsystem losses, soiling, shading, building all of that into, and then what we started to realize as we started to, expose most of these results is we realized that really we're going to need to really dig down over here and innovate, because we started realizing that there were some fundamental problems that needed to be thought through and fixed, right? And at a high level, they kind of came down to, what we started calling the 3 T's internally. So trust, time, and tools, right? And why this mattered was, so I think, there are some people who also hinted at this in your poll. So let's take trust, right? So for what we realized is that there's really a lack of trust in the data, especially in the PV industry. And to build on that, there's also a lack of trust in as-built models and performance models. So really, going back to Anand's point before, an asset manager, first of all, waits until the end of the month to get a report, and then he looks at the report, and the first thing he says is, hey, performance team, can you go and just dig into the data over here, because I don't want to spin up my wheels on this unless I can actually trust the data here. That goes and takes up all of this effort. And then they got to say, okay, well, do I trust my model? Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to go spin up this other initiative where I'm going to go reassess my actual models and maybe re-implement, because I don't trust what PVsys spat out, or I don't trust what my manufacturer specifications were. This is just a rampant lack of trust, right? So, okay, looking past that, then we started realizing, okay, wait a minute, actually, beyond that, there's a problem of time over here, right? So this goes back to what we were talking about before, where, teams are lean, there's a lot of pressure because, we all know that in the PV industry, manufacturing costs and so on have gone down. And what that means is that now when people look at their, their cost, list, they're going to see that O&M and asset budgets are what's coming up to the top, right? So there's pressure to drop those costs, which means teams like Anand and Ryan's teams have to be really lean. And what that means is every single second in their lives is precious, but they're spending a lot of their time doing data checks and report building and, model checking and all of this. And we realize like a lot of this needs to, fundamentally we have to go back, innovate the entire data pipeline so that we flip this. Instead of their team spending 80% of their time doing all of this work, we have to completely reinvent the system so that they now have that 80% time available to do high value analysis, right? So what would a world look like if Anand and Ryan's team never had to do any more data checks? Everything was just, completely validated for them, and, shown to them in a manner where the data had been surrogated. They never had to question the data. Or for example, they never had to say, hey, these inverters were out of communication. So here's an interesting little fun fact. One of our key customers, per month, they suffer more than 15,000 across their entire portfolio, more than 15,000 comm loss events on their inverters. That really gives you a pause, because imagine, sometimes you have single digit teams, right? How in the world would this team be able to look through all these events and figure out what's going on at these inverters actually? And, so it's, and then finally it was about tools, right? Like, so Anand talked about, aerial IR inspections, and that's a really great kind of technology that's evolved a lot. But beyond that, a lot of, and I think this was the number one, item in your poll also, which I'm not surprised by, is why isn't the PV industry able to provide the tools that can go beyond this, right? So why isn't it possible, for example, to just use AC side data and tell me what's going on my DC side system? Why isn't it possible
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
have a machine learning classifier that can just use my ACSI data and tell me what my issues are, classify it and automate all of that so that I can actually take action against this, right? Why can't,
Yeah.
if I
Excellent.
have DCSI data, why can't they carry? So just a, a frustration around just, I need the more advanced tools and I need everybody to solve my problems of trust and time so that I can actually do what I was paid
Right.
for.
Right. Excellent. Well, let's go back to Anand and Ryan on that very question. You participated in this pre-release. We consider you co-innovators of the product. What, as you were going through this alpha testing, what features do you like the most, and what functionality do you think delivers the most value in Drive Pro?
I think having the opportunity to participate in the beta testing of Drive Pro was a fantastic experience for us. It was very collaborative, and in that sense, we had the opportunity to gain some expert insights into the finer features of the Drive Pro and some very practical sort of experiences with using some of these advanced analytical tools to troubleshoot sensors and configure events and this kind of things. And we also had, the opportunity to influence the design and development of some of these features. So I think overall it was a very positive experience for us. Drive Pro includes some very powerful analytical tools, but I think key for Arevon, for the Arevon team is the usability of the Drive platform, and kind of to the points that Abhilash was speaking to. We worked closely with PowerFactors team to develop some of these features that would allow us to effectively drill down into into the data from high level, a high level loss walk or a list of the worst performing plants into performance of a specific inverter or combiner box at a specific plant within just a few clicks, without having to to go back and forth between different screens and try to figure out how to how to link this process. I like the loss overview, which provides, again, a quick kind of overview of the losses across a specific plant or portfolio, with click-throughs that facilitate drilling down into the sources of the losses. The graded classifier is also becoming one of my go-tos in Drive Pro.
Yeah, I like that tool.
And provides a little more details about the performance deviations from sort of baseline expectations. The Drive Pro quality data quality tools are extremely helpful. Like Abhilash said, having trust in that data to and providing that kind of automated data validations and estimations of curated data, which really can help to give insights into underlying data issues that may bring into question the confidence in a KPI, or identify issues with sensors or communication equipment.
Excellent. Let me follow up with Abhilash real quickly, Abhilash, because we're running low on time. But Ryan just spoke to this idea of data qualification. Can you, in 60 seconds, tell our audience what this new concept of data capability and scoring is that comes with Drive Pro?
Yeah, I'll try it in 60 seconds. It's a lofty challenge. So, the fundamental aha moment for us, Steve, was in realizing that we needed to actually build an entire workflow and automated system that ran an ever-expanding list of data checks at various frequencies, daily, weekly, monthly, even hourly, and build that into a workflow system that made the lives of Anand and Ryan's teams so much easier to immediately understand, okay, where exactly are my pyranometers miscalibrated? Where exactly do I have metadata issues? Where exactly do I have issues, around the weather data that I'm reading. So this whole, basically we built a system that we call the data capability engine. And the idea of data capability is not just about data quality. Really, it's a larger question where we're trying to answer how capable are your assets today of answering the questions you ask of it, right? And this can have to do with the kind of data you're receiving, how much data you're receiving, the quality of the data you're receiving, and larger checks beyond that. So this entire framework that we built out and that runs in an automated manner, coupled with our ability to surrogate data and have a configurable framework on how you surrogate different types of data, that kind of was what was required in order to solve this problem.
Got it. And it's a specific number, and with that number, we tell you what we are capable right now of doing in terms of analytics and so on. So that is so
I forgot that little point
of an idea.
Exactly, because it was, the idea of priority is so important here, right? If I just show up to let's say Anand's team and I say, hey Anand, your team actually has this portfolio has 500 data issues. He's gonna look at me and say, all right, I have 5 minutes. What do I do with 500 issues?
Yeah.
And so this idea of being able to build a scoring framework where we go from 0 through 4, where 4 are your least priority and your 0 is your hype. So this exception-based management again, right? That we kind of built that into.
Absolutely critical. Thank you. We're going to take a couple questions from the audience here, and I'm going to throw these out to all of our panelists. So let me just start with one that I thought was really worthy. They're all worthy, but one that really caught my eye. So here's one that came in. It says, does the new Drive Pro tool allow users to easily categorize outages into different categories to be counted toward availability guarantees for multiple customers with different exclusion categories or calculation requirements? So there we are, that complex performance or contract availability guarantee. Abhilash, how do we help our customers do this with Drive Pro?
So there's various layers to this, right? So your best case scenario is that we'll start from the best case scenario and we'll slowly work our way towards the nightmare situation, right? So the best case scenario is that you've actually got, let's say,
all
a
in
fault
90
code,
seconds,
or that you've actually got an event that is very easy to detect just based off of the the production data or weather data that you're reading. And the way it works in Drive and Drive Pro is that you've actually got event codes that are mapped to this, and from the day one, you've got a knowledge base where you have mapped these event codes to certain classifications. So already it's auto-categorized, and yes, we have an industry-leading event management tool that allows you to recategorize these events and so on. But moving further down, what we also want to do is when you don't have events that are being created, either because communications losses are happening or you don't actually know what's going on with the asset, we do create events there, and we provide metrics along with those events to help you say, so this inverter is in communications loss, but based on all the other production data we're reading and from your your substation data, what we're able to tell you that this inverter is probably in an outage state. So various levels of categorization are definitely possible with Drive Pro.
I'm gonna add.
Go ahead.
I'm going to add to what Abhilash said. I think another key aspect of what I think we're able to do with the Drive tool is be able to even split the downtimes, right? Split those outage logs, right? I think that's again, I think it's a big piece of excludable events, right, which are kind of coming into play in availability contracts. So the ability to split an outage, saying, you know what, this piece of it is the owner's responsibility, this piece of it is the operator's responsibility. I think that is something which is an additional benefit which we've seen as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Anand. I'm just going to add to that. In addition, I don't think either of you said this exactly, but we use the IEC standards to assign controllability and responsibility automatically. So all of this categorization and classification is happening automatically. Now, as Anand said, let's say this event of 8 hours, 4 is assignable to the owner and 4 to the operator. You can, like in accounting terms, you can split that account and you can do the energy accounting so that at the end of the day, when you push the button, the contract availability number comes out properly. So I want to follow on this. I'm gonna answer this question and then see how you think I did. This is from my good friend Tim Dieroff, who's been in the industry forever, and he asked a tricky question here. He says, if the availability guarantee is 99%, there is only 1% of bonus possibility. Does this work? Okay, Tim, great question. Here's how I'd answer that. First of all, it's a fallacy in the industry that solar power plants are running at 99% availability. You say, well, everyone says that's true. What am I saying? Yes, they're running at 99% simple operational availability, breaker closed. 99% of the time they're up. But if you do an energy-based, not a time-based, as you know, the equivalent availability factor, a capacity or energy weighted, I'm estimating that the best in the industry is 96%. So there really is 4% headroom, not 1% headroom for that operator to improve upon. So yes, I think there are many rocks that can be turned over using tools like Drive Pro to go deep into the DC array to find these underlying little nagging, niggling problems that are not typically visible to improve our overall. I think the number is between 2 and 5% of overall energy production optimization, not time-based, notice, but energy-based stuff that's been hidden to us heretofore, but now becomes visible with tools like Drive Pro. So I'm going to throw it back to the panelists and see how do you think I did? Is there anything I'm missing? What would you say about my 96% equivalent availability factor compared to the industry standard thinking that we're running at 99%? Any thoughts on that one?
Well, from my end,
Ryan wants to.
No, Anand, I want to go after you.
Okay. I think for the most part, right? I think when you combine curtailment, when you combine all the remaining factors out there, I think yes, right. I mean, we're probably around the 96, 97%. I think what we're moving towards is more confidence in equipment capability as well as O&M partners capability, right? In fixing equipment, in getting that higher availability percentage, right? I'll be honest, right? I mean, we have a ton of sites where our technical availability, like Ryan mentioned, right? Not contractual availability. Our technical availability is in the 99% range. Yes, I mean, we do get events that happen from time to time, right? Which sets us off. But the fact of the matter is, I think we are the capability set which the equipment kind of brings in, as well as the capability set which the O&M contractors kind of bring in, with performance engineering capabilities, with the ability to identify whether or not an equipment is going to fail. I think, like I said, right, I mean, tools like Power Factors, Drive Pro, and a lot of others on the market are kind of helping us move towards that, right? Move towards that path. For sure, and to answer Tim's question, right? Yes, right. I mean, if you were to consider the 99%, I think yes, you just have 1% to deal with. So do we, right? As owners, right? It's
right.
The fact of the matter, right? Again, that's how compressed things are, and again, the expectation that the fact that, I mean, we've come up with a 99% threshold as what is achievable is purely based upon some of the metrics that we've seen and that O&M providers as well as equipment manufacturers have been able to kind of deliver, right? So I think, yes, I think we're still only going to be sharing 1%, just to be clear.
Yeah. So let me throw that out to Ryan now. Ryan, you've been in the industry a long time. You've turned over many rocks looking for kilowatt hours hidden in the plant. What do you think is the average potential incremental production hiding in the DC array that can be uncovered using good quality tools that tell accurate information at a detailed DC array level? What's the range of potential performance improvement here?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a bit of a moving target with most plants. I think you don't start out day one at 99% technical availability for most of the plants we see. I think that is something that happens over time, hopefully. I think we generally see a bit of a bathtub curve in terms of, you know, failures. You have the initial, trying to think of the word, you know, you have these infancy
infant mortality
Yeah.
problems.
infant mortality issues early in the project, and then I think you go through this
Yeah.
period of where, you know, the projects become more or less stable if you have, like you said, you know, good, if the plant was designed in the first place well and is maintained well and, you know, has the right sensors to track it and be sure of what you're tracking. I think, you know, you can get to those places, and we certainly have with some of our plants of you know, 99% of 99% technical availabilities. I think those are achievable. But again, it depends too. I mean, as the systems become more and more complex, that factors into this as well. I think, you know, we have to kind of continually adjust that bar, not only for where we are within the life cycle of the plant, you know, and I think the jury's still out on a lot of these plants as to, you know, what will happen in year 10, you know, for to the technical availability again. So you know, you almost have to look at a sort of a long-term trend if you're going to average out that you know, what can be gained at any given point. But I think you know, really also understanding what is possible to gain and where you really are is also a bit of a moving target, and very often not an easy thing to get at in terms of, you know, really making sure that your model represents what is built on site, and that model is not, you know, that whatever's on site is not changing as well. So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
Ryan, I need to cut you off there because we're almost out of time, but I just want to add to what Ryan just said. You know, sometimes you buy a piece of software, it tells you an answer. You said, I'm done with it, I don't need it anymore. Well, as Ryan just said, these are dynamic plants, soiling, all the other things that are going on. The answer you had yesterday may be a different answer tomorrow. And so this tool, as Anand and Abhilash and Ryan have been telling you, tracks the model as time goes on, tracks the actual operational performance as the plant goes on, as it's dynamically being impacted by weather, soiling, shading, all these other factors. So it really is a moving target. You have to stay on top of it. I'm going to give Abhilash one final question from the audience, if I can, because we're running out of time, and then I'm going to wrap up. So Abhilash, you've got 60 seconds here. Here's the last question. Does your platform offer tools that allow users to drill down into DC side health of the site with accuracy and not just represent it as a catch-all bucket?
Absolutely.
You got 60 seconds, Abhilash.
Absolutely. So this was a major goal for us, was to say, you know, talking about hidden losses and, you know, people just shrugging their shoulders. It's all very well for people to have preventive maintenance plans where you send out an aerial inspection once every 6 months. But we've seen cases where you've got, you know, combiners that are down, or, you know, whole arrays that are down for, you know, that whole 6-month period. So absolutely, one thing that we're really proud about is that using just AC side data, we're able to indicate that specifically DC health issues are happening. And we also provide you the ability to drill down into where exactly that's happening. So which combiners specifically are, you know, that's happening. And you know, the reality of PV, you know, the great part about the way things work on the field is that if you can tell a good technician which combiner specifically there is a problem, you've actually cut maybe to 1/10 the amount of time he's going to spend fixing that problem.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And sorry,
okay,
Steve.
Thank you, Abhilash.
I know you and Abhilash kind of mentioned this, but just to add to that, I think your point about, like, again, if you were to talk purely about availability, yes, right. I mean, I think there is probably it's a %, but when you add in the DC losses, the DC mismatch losses, soiling, like you mentioned, right? I think just imagine the PV assist waterfall kind of coming into your brain, right? And you're seeing all the different DC losses and AC losses. Yes, there is a lot of optimization and identification of those losses, which is required, and which again is visible to us through the DrivePro platform.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up here and let you know, audience, that there were many other questions that came in. Don't worry, we're going to answer all of those via email, so you will get some responses for everybody. But we're running out of time. So first of all, I just want to thank our panelists for the insights they've shared today and on the topic of making every megawatt hour count. I think we'd all agree that the market dynamics are making it increasingly difficult for solar power owners and operators to meet their revenue projections for their portfolio of projects. So whether the pressures come from overly optimistic bank models, falling energy prices, squeezed O&M budgets, the need for solar power projects to maximize production while keeping costs in check has never been greater. Power Factors exist to equip renewable energy owners and operators with the tools and insights needed to maximize the operational performance of their portfolio of projects. If you are interested in learning anything more about Drive Pro, about Power Factors in particular, you'll see on my screen here, you can hit info@pfdrive.com with an email or go to our website at pfdrive.com. If you'd like to follow up with Anon, Ryan, Abalash, myself, there's our email address up on the screen. There's much more to talk about. Unfortunately, 60 minutes doesn't do it justice. We'll be doing some follow-on webinars to talk more about the new release of Drive Pro. So thank you, Reuters. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panelists, for making this a really impactful session today. I hope it was valuable and you found it very insightful also. I'm going to turn it back to Reese at Reuters now. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yep. So thanks a lot to the panelists again for joining us. And as Steve mentioned, any unanswered questions we'll follow up in email alongside with the recording, which will be released on Monday. So you'll get the recording from this session to share with your colleagues and to look back over at the insights on Monday. So expect that in your inbox. And yeah, once again, I'd just like to thank the Power Factors team for working with us closely for this webinar. And then moving forwards, you can check out our portfolio of webinars coming in October and November, covering renewables. Specifically, next we're tackling some offshore wind development in Europe. So if that's your bag, then take a look on the Reuters events website for more details. Thanks a lot again for tuning in today, guys, and thanks again to the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye bye now.